We are live, everybody.
Cool. Hello, everyone at home. Welcome to the first of our discussions. You have probably know from social media, we've been running this internet online summer astronomy book club. So all summer, we're going to be reading some of our favorite astronomy books for young people, and we are asking you to read along with us. And then when we finish reading, we're going to get together and have a bit of a chat and let you know what we thought. And we also want to know what you think as well. So there is a description for Slido down in the doobly-doo below the video. So Slido is this really great interactive service. If you haven't come to one of our events before, we use Slido to kind of interact with people. So you can log on a couple of different ways. So either point your browser or just use a smartphone or something and scan the QR code, which I think is in the corner, and use the code AstroBooks to log on to the conversation. We really want to hear what you think. So we're going to talk a bit about how we felt about the book, but we really want to know what you thought. So log on and just let us know. Should we go around and introduce ourselves? So my name is Matt. I'm an astronomer in Cambridge.
Hi, I'm Annabelle. I'm a first-year PhD student at Cambridge.
And hi, I'm Luis. I'm a final year PhD student in Cambridge too.
So actually, I've just realized being the technical support team, I muted myself. So yes, I am Asha and I'm a PhD student and I disappeared because I'm your technical support today. So let's get going.
Cool. Yeah. So Hidden Figures. Yeah, I guess we'll just kick this off by asking you guys, what did you think? Like, did you enjoy reading the book?
Really enjoyed it.
Oh, sorry, latency.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the book. It was really interesting to read about like the history of what happened, like what happened before to get to the race to the space, and also all like the history around it, all the civil rights movement and the women rights. I think it was really interesting to learn all about this while at the same time hearing about like specific people from that era.
Definitely. I mean, I think it's such a. I mean, I found it super interesting, and it's such an important book as well because it's tackling, like you said, tackling two really big subjects, right? So it's talking about how humanity are taking the next steps in our species into exploring space and walking on the moon and all that kind of stuff. And it almost seems a bit pointless doing this kind of grand humanity stuff if we're still going to be discriminating against parts of our society, right? And saying that some people don't belong. So I think it's really fitting that the two stories kind of go hand in hand and get told together.
Yeah.
How did you guys feel about the amount of kind of scientific stuff? Because I think the movie is a bit different. So I don't know how many people out there have seen the movie, but I think the movie is a bit different. So the movie is a lot more just about the stories of the lives of these three women that work for NASA. The book goes into a lot more detail about the science and the technical side of things. I don't know how you guys felt about that.
I found it really interesting just because it was interesting to learn actually about like all the technical stuff that we didn't really heard about in any other way. So like the movie was really interesting, but it was more following the tree woman. Well, like the book is about the tree woman, but also about like everything around it. And I found it really interesting to like learn more about that, of like all the discoveries that were made, like that at some point it was like not even a thought of like going over the sound of speed, and then at some point they were able, and at some point they were able to go in space. And I think it was interesting to understand how it happened, so it helped with the story doing that.
Actually, guys, if I can just chime in, we've got input from the audience. So if you don't mind me reading it out. So we've got people saying that they're only 2/3 of the way through, but they love it. And that they're reading it to their 4 boys and they cannot believe the prejudice in the book. Other people say that they haven't seen the film yet, however, they love the science and technical bits. So that's a little bit of audience input for you guys.
Excellent. I mean, I agree completely. I not being able to believe the prejudice, I think, is like summed up a lot of my thought process while reading the book. it's an amazing window into a time that really wasn't that long ago. Right, it's within our and at least people kind of our age, our grandparents, and even our parents' lifetime, that there was still this huge discrimination going on. I find it quite interesting to think about the number of ways that we've got better. We no longer segregate bathrooms and all these kinds of terrible things, but at the same time, the number of ways that we still have far to go. Right, I mean, we haven't achieved a perfect society that's fair for everyone. Right, so we still have a long way to go about this.
So when we're talking about the inclusion of all the difficult topics touched upon in the book, actually we've got Henry B. 8, who says that he enjoyed the book, recently watched the film. The book had more details, and he found that the timescale of the film wasn't correct. Any comments about that?
Yeah, so I think that, well, to do a good movie, it was more important to follow some people and do more biography. And I think it was easier for a movie to do just a very specific time scale of the story. So they decided to go with when it was actually already NASA and they were going for sending people in space. But they also wanted to put in the movie all that happened with the Black movement. So when the bathrooms were segregated, when the women were not allowed in the meeting rooms and all that stuff. So I think they kind of put that all together and made it so that it seems that it was during the NASA time. Well, we understand in the book that it was actually before, and during the NASA time, it was better. If it was not perfect, but it was better. So I think they just did that for making a better movie, so that it's easier to watch. That makes sense.
It's often why I like books more than films, because the books get to go into kind of all the details and tell you all the stuff that you wish you knew when you watch the film,
And I also found the timeline at the back of the book very handy, just to follow what's going on, right? Something that you definitely don't have when you're watching the movie. But I really enjoyed that. It puts all these events in context of what was also going on around the world, and that ultimately the space race was the culmination of an effort that had been going on for much, much longer, right? And how the lives of these people didn't just happen 10 years before humans made it to the moon, but that there was huge efforts and lots of people working together on a common goal.
Yep. So actually, Lewis, touching upon what you've said that the book has, but the film doesn't. Actually, Henry B. Peter H. says that it was great, but he would have liked more if it had color pictures.
I did find it hard sometimes to see the black and white pictures. Some of them were really hard to distinguish what was actually going on in the background.
Yes.
I guess it makes the book cheaper though. So I mean, yeah, it's absolutely true. But I think it also might be that some of the photos were taken before we had color pictures, right?
Of course. Actually, so still in the realm of the issues that were concerning the American society at the time, Henry B. says that it was interesting how much politics has an effect on scientific development.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important for everyone to realize that science is amazing, right? I mean, we all do what we do because we love science, but science doesn't happen, science is not a magical world that's separated from the real world. Science is done by real people. Science follows, the government, who is paying for it, and it is in lots of ways a reflection of what's going on in society as a whole. And so I think this is why a lot of these issues about kind of discrimination are important, because we want to make science better, right? And so making science better is part of making society fairer for everyone.
Agreed entirely.
And many times the developments that happen in science mirror what's going on in society and vice versa, right? So there's huge struggles that happen in science that are motivated for whatever is going also in the war. And in the world, in this case, war.
Yeah, absolutely. I found it quite interesting in the book. I kept on thinking that the civil rights movement and the space race are all often kind of mirrors of each other, right? It's they're exploring ideas of freedom and ideas of kind of getting better at things, right? It was society had a vision of the future and wanted to be better, right? And one of the ways that society wanted to be better was to be fairer for everyone. And another ways that society wanted to be better was to be better kind of scientifically and technologically and have people in space. They had a vision of the future, you know? I also found that the small things really interesting. Like I really liked just the little details. It was like a window into the past. Like it always makes me laugh that computer used to be a job that people would do. So, you could, when you were little, you could say, I want to be a computer when I grow up.
Yeah, it was weird at the beginning of the book, getting used to that, of reading like, oh, a human computer, and you're like, yes, this is normal for that time.
Yeah.
Actually, as we were speaking, we've got a comment from Pippa, who's 7 years old, that she thought it was interesting that the women were called computers. Yep. So we're thinking just like the audience is thinking just like us, and we're thinking just like the audience.
I really like the bit in the book it was a bit near the end where they were talking about these new like fancy aeroplanes, and the people that were flying the airplanes didn't trust the new electric computers, and they wanted the guarantee that the numbers worked out by a human computer. And just kind of shows how far we've come. I think I want to, if I'm in a plane, I think I want a computer to have done the maths for it.
Exactly.
We know now that computers don't make mistakes. But yeah, things were very different 60 years ago.
Absolutely. We've got a comment from Anonymous who said it was really powerful for their daughter to read the stories of segregation. She knew the basics, but seeing what happened to the women made her understand.
Yeah, I think it's the same for me too. It's like we learned it at school when I was young that it happened, but like reading a story of real people, I think it made it more real and understandable what happened. And a bit crazy that it actually happened like not long ago.
Actually, we've got, I think this is a question from the audience actually. This comes from Norair, 8 years old. I have not finished the book yet. What did Mary like studying the most?
Mary was studying airplane that were going super fast, so like over the speed of sound, and she was really interested into engineering, so she was the first Black woman to become an engineer at that Langley Institute.
Was she also the first one to have put her name on the report?
I think that was Catherine Johnson.
Was that Catherine?
Yeah, I think that was Catherine. Am I right?
I think Mary did do some reports.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
I finished it a few days ago, so
She did add some reports. I don't know if she was the first one.
Yeah.
So I think we've got quite an emotional comment to the book from Marin, age 9. Who says that they enjoyed the book and found it very interesting. They loved reading about the missions in space and was sad about how hard African-American lives were. Which is a very fair comment to have, of course. Reacting emotionally to history is the correct way. One of the developmental stages of understanding history, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's what you were saying, Annabelle, where you go from, it's one thing to learn about this in school in a very kind of dry way and just read in books, this happens. But when you actually realize that this happened to real people, right? And that there were real people that were kind of held back in these kinds of ways, it is very emotional.
And one of the things that I really liked about the book is that it highlights that these are things that are constantly changing and developing, right? At the beginning of the book, they tell us how through the Emancipation Declaration, people thought that everything was going to be solved, but still there were so many challenges and struggles that came for the next 50 years. And the same thing after the movement in the 50s and the 60s, we are still going through many, many processes that are happening as we speak, right? And maybe our grandchildren will look back at our times and have that similar reaction of, I can't believe how people were treated, right? So society is always changing.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I often think if you could go back and ask one of these women in the 1960s how they would imagine things in the year 2020, they might be disappointed to learn like how far we still have to go, right? The fact that we still have these systematic barriers for people. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Lewis. I think our grandchildren might look back on us, and hopefully they will, right? I mean, if we do our job of making things better, then the young people of today will look back on like society now and realize like how much we had to fix.
Yeah. And a huge part is that comment that the audience was making, right? That we have to learn from, and Annabelle and all of everyone here, that we have to learn from our history and know that this happened to real people, and get that close to our hearts and react to it.
One question I have for you guys, and maybe you could think about this at home as well, was about the money that these programs cost. Because again, that's still a thing that we're thinking about today. They said that the program in today's money cost about $150 billion, which is $150,000 million. And I think there's a bit of, some people kind of felt it's not worth it, right? When there are so many problems in society and so much good that money could have done here on Earth, that just putting a person in space, it was maybe not the best way to spend that money. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a hard question because it's always difficult with like how much money it costs, but at the same time, those missions really like paved the way to like a lot of discoveries. Like, well, first it was really like a great human achievement, I think, to get like in space and then to the moon. So it was like, I don't know, like some ways that all humans felt like together. And I think space is like the place where like all countries are together right now, like with the International Space Station. But also there's a lot of like discoveries that were done for those missions that are not used in the everyday life. Like, for example, all the like touch phones, it's based on like technologies that were discovered for the space race. So I think it's hard to see like the full impact of those technology development. Yes, it seems like just money you put like to go to the moon, but there's also a lot of stuff that come out of it that are used afterwards, but we cannot see like in the moment. So yeah.
I mean, one thing that really struck me as interesting was that at the beginning of the book, they mentioned how Naka was thinking about planes and never thinking about space, because space was just a matter of science fiction. And then when they saw Sputnik finally in orbit, they realized that they had to go to space, and that switched gears. But imagine what would have happened if they stayed with planes, right? We wouldn't have satellites giving us the internet through which this is being broadcasted, right? Or with a pandemic like this, the internet is making communications possible. So I'm not saying it's a one-to-one relationship in that because there were humans in the moon, we have the internet, but really those things paved the way, right? They in the book they mentioned about how they had to put antennas around the world so they could keep communication with the missions. So yes, it was $150,000 million. And I wonder how many of that went to paying people a nice wage so that they could survive, how much of that went into development of new technologies and reusable technologies that didn't just end up in the moon, but actually were used for later missions or centers. One thing that I really liked was a mention of the NASA Goddard Center, right? That started because of this, but now Goddard is a big place where research is being done and where the boundaries of our science are being pushed. So money that went into putting those buildings that helped put a man on the moon are now helping generations 60 years away.
Because so much astronomy is done from space, right? I mean, there are space telescopes, right? I'm sure people listening at home would have seen like the beautiful pictures that the Hubble Space Telescope makes. The Hubble Space Telescope exists because we learned how to put people and things into space. And so I think you guys are absolutely right. It's a lot of money, but then we end up with such an amazing understanding of how our universe works, which really speaks to everyone, right? Because I think it's part of our human, we all have a kind of a human right to understand the universe that's around us.
So we actually have a response from audience from Elsie Widows, who says that she thinks it was a very good use of the money. So we've got the audience agreeing with us, but actually switching off the topic still, because the questions keep on coming, we've got a comment from Henry B, who says that his mom says women are still discriminated against in tech, so that ties back into what we're talking about, how we make progress all the time, and how our grandchildren will look back at us thinking we were the dark ages. So so yeah, we've got a lot of questions, and not questions but comments coming in from the audience. It's fantastic. We really love it when you guys interact with us. We're there to have a discussion together on Slido, so it's fantastic that you're taking part. Thank you very much. Keep those comments coming.
And yeah, I think it's still happening, but for sure it's getting better. And I think it was Mary was saying that one thing great about like the first is that you never have to overcome that barrier again, which I think was really nice. And I think at the end of the book, it was also like they were talking a lot about the pioneers, and that the future generation will be able to like go into those fields more easily over time. So I think it continues now. Like for sure, discrimination is not finished, but it's getting better and better. And just the fact that more women goes there, more Black people, it makes it easier for younger generations. So I think just by continuing to going into those fields, it really helps.
I mean, I think it's also important to remember that like the battle isn't finished, right? I mean, I think it's it's very important to realize that this is a journey that we are still on, and rather than thinking this is great, we fixed everything, we need to kind of keep on pushing the same train, right, to kind of make the barriers to entry as low as possible. Like there are still fewer women in science than men in science, right? And so like I think it's only going to be finished when the gates are open for absolutely anyone, like kind of regardless of kind of, you know, where they're from or what gender they are or anything like that.
So actually we've got an interesting question
about...
Oh yeah, sorry, that's latency, my apologies. I actually if I may very quickly,
right. I'm having issues with that.
The question from Peter H, who says, who do you think made the biggest change?
I mean, that's very sorry, go on, Annabelle.
No, go ahead. That's fine.
I mean, it's very hard to say, because I think as soon as you say someone made the biggest change, you're kind of saying the other three weren't as important. And I think the whole reason that the book is not celebrating one person, it's celebrating lots of people, is because they all had an important part to play. You know, Katherine Johnson was an amazing mathematician, but then, you know, Dorothy Vaughan was an amazing kind of, you know, she was an engineer and a manager of people as well, right? And she was one of the first kind of Black women to be a supervisor of a department, of a section. I feel like I'm slightly dodging the question, but I don't think you can just say one person's more important and one person's not. Like the book is about several women for a reason.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. It's like every of them did like a small part in that big adventure, and I think they were all very important to it. And, yeah.
At the risk of sounding cliche, I think that's the main point of the book, right? The book is highlighting all the hidden figures, and while the book is highlighting 3 women that helped a lot, many names go unnamed, right? And I don't remember the exact number, but the book does mention how thousands of people have been involved with that. And I really enjoy, for example, I think it was a speech by Lyndon B. Johnson. I could be wrong on who gave the speech, but they were highlighting how everyone helped, right? From the maintenance staff to the engineers to the caretakers. Without the input of every single one of these humans, none of these differences would have been possible. Ultimately, I think it was society that helped push these boundaries and make sure that people had a better life afterwards.
I think that's a really good point. I think it ties into the way people think about science in general, right? I think the way often science gets spoken about is that it's done by individual great geniuses who are normally men in the stories that get told, right? It's the idea that individual great men push science forward, which is completely not true, right? I mean, science is, you know, has many hidden figures, like the book says, and it's not individual people doing the work that push it forward. It's the collaboration of thousands and thousands of people who all working in their own way and sharing knowledge, that pushes us forwards.
Actually, on the topic of whether it was worth it or not, we've got Aaron, age 9, who says that there were many inventions we wouldn't have without space research that improve our lives on Earth. CAT scans and solar cells.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
true. I think
from the
the
audience.
Velcro might be one of them as well. I remember Velcro being something that was developed for the space race. Very important.
And so useful.
Her examples were better. CAT scans are probably more important than Velcro.
Well, it's useful on a daily basis. CAT scans are less day to day, I guess. Also, we've got Joshua 11 saying that he feels inspired by what these 4 women did, considering the challenges they had to overcome. And he says he's definitely going to watch the film tonight.
Excellent. Yes. I also want to read. Yes, I think I didn't mention this. There are actually 3 versions of this book. So there's one written for kind of adult general audiences. There's this one written for kind of 8 to 12-year-olds, and there's also a very young picture book for kind of 4 or 5-year-olds. I don't know about you guys. Like, reading this one made me really want to go and read the others to find out what else, what more there is to the story.
Yes, agreed.
And do make use of the references to the back, right? Actually, there was, I was really interested on the whole chapter about the bathrooms and how segregated they were. And there are many newspaper articles referenced at the back where they talk more in detail about what actually happened. And it's, I went to Google just to check them out. And it's good to see the language with which the conversation was being taken and the take of people. Really, really interesting for sure.
Oh, actually, there is an interesting input from the audience, I think, that might interest all of you guys. That Elsie says that she didn't know that there were any space missions before Apollo 11. So that's actually a common that's a common thought, isn't it? That we just went to the moon and that's it.
No, it's true. I think Apollo 11 is very, very famous, importantly, because it's the first time a person ever went to the moon. But yes, there were lots and lots and lots before this. So we were talking before the call. That's the Soviet Union put a person in space for the first time, right? So the first person to go to space and the first person to orbit around the Earth was actually not an American. And so yes, something I found quite interesting in the book was that it's very much written as like kind of like in the space race, right? It was this battle between America and the Soviet Union to get into space first. And I think what we were saying earlier about the International Space Station, the way space is a bit more kind of a friendly collaboration these days, I think is really, really nice. I mean, I always found it very silly, the fact that, we are all humans from one planet, but, we we fight against each other based on where we're born, be into space first. I mean, I can always imagine aliens finding it a bit silly.
Yeah.
Arriving on Earth and asking, why are you guys not combining your forces together? It seems natural, right? Actually, we've also got feedback from Tabitha on Slido, who says that she's really enjoying this and she thanks us for doing that.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, this has been really fun. Like, I have enjoyed reading the book so much, and it's really great to hear what you guys think and also hear what you guys think at home. It's been really fun reading along with you.
I believe Matt, you've got a cool question to the audience.
I do. I wanted to kind of take the audience's opinion on something. So one thing that really stood out to me was how scary it would have been to go to space. There was the story about the first American to go into space, and they basically shot him up in a big cannonball, and then he kind of landed, which I can't imagine anything. As someone that doesn't even like roller coasters, I can't even imagine anything more scary. So I wanted to hear what you guys thought at home. So, given that we're talking about the risk of going to space, would you guys want to be maybe the first person on Mars or go to Mars? I just wanted to get your thoughts to see where you were at on this. because there's a bit of a new space race going on, right? So in the 1960s, there was a race to get people into space and to get people onto the moon. Now there's a bit of a race to get people to Mars for the first time. There's lots of different kind of countries and even some private companies now. That's the new thing. We have some businesses like SpaceX who want to put people on Mars. And it's very hard to predict when it's going to happen, but maybe in 20 or 30 years' time, a person might go into Mars. And the exciting thing is that means if it's happening in 20 or 30 years, the first person that goes to Mars is probably around 10 years old right now. So, you guys that are reading along at home and that are the age group for this book, the first person that go to Mars could well be you, right? You are that age group. So yeah, would you want to be that person?
So far, we've got 10 people who answered our question, and it's actually an even split between yes and maybe, and only 20% say no. So I think it's an overall getting there. The future generation of astronauts is definitely growing. Yes, as we were talking about taking new risks and taking advantage of new technologies that are coming in for, say, our target audience, the 10-year-olds, reading the books actually is a very good way of learning. Since these are not textbooks, they are the facts are more likely to stay. Do you guys have any advice to our listeners regarding to how to read a popular astronomy book to get most of it? Any additional resources you think might be useful in reading that to provide additional context?
So do you mean this book in particular, or just
I mean general astronomy books. We can of course base it on Hidden Figures, but general for future reads. Yeah.
Well, I mean, a great place to start is the internet. I mean, there is an amazing amount of absolutely free stuff online that can teach you all about astronomy. A shameless plug for our own channel. We have lots of resources for young people right here. We have these kind of like lecture series where we talk about all different cool things, from black holes to aliens to exploding stars. Every week, we have an Ask an Astronomer live stream. So if you have questions about astronomy, you can hop on and talk about that. And yeah, there are absolutely loads of websites where you can then find things about astronomy. One of my favorite ones is the NASA do the astronomy picture of the day. And so every day there's a new kind of really, really amazing, pretty picture of something in space. And then you can kind of click through. So, you see the beautiful thing, and then you can kind of click through and find out more about what you're actually seeing, which is, I really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. Astronomy picture of the day is something that got me into astronomy, really. So that's a shameless personal story. And as we speak, actually, we've got a clear win of yes. We've got yes, maybe, and no. In terms of order.
This makes me happy. That's the right answer, I think.
Yes, yes is winning in the car.
Are willing to help from ground. Sorry, I was just saying that I hope that the yes can help from ground and make sure that everyone makes it worse.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Actually,
definitely. How are we doing for time? We'll be going. It's about coming to 5:10, isn't it?
I believe so.
This might be a good place to finish. Unless there are any more questions coming in that we need to.
Oh, that's a very good point. I was too excited about the poll that I stopped looking at the questions. Let me look at them real quick. So these are not really questions, but there are a couple of comments I think everyone else would like to hear as well. So if I real quick change into our questions. So Peter says that he thinks that the space race would have been a different length of time if the civil rights movement was before or after it instead of in it. Do you guys have any comments on that?
I mean, that's first of all, that's a really, really interesting point.
Yeah.
It's very hard to know because history is so complicated. Like there are so many different things going on with what motivates people and what doesn't motivate people. But you could well be right. I mean, so the civil rights movement, because the civil rights movement hadn't happened when the space race was starting, there were millions and millions and millions of people in the US that couldn't contribute, right? And because of racial discrimination and also kind of gender discrimination, there were, millions of people that were, obviously very, very talented and could have contributed, but were prevented from doing so. So if I was to guess, I would guess the space race would have been much, much faster and more efficient if the barriers were removed, right? Like, because when you make things fairer, science gets better.
Yeah.
So
I think ultimately it would have been much faster if both the US and the USSR collaborated. Right?
That's a very fair point.
Had the two superpowers fighting for the same goal.
Yeah, that's a wonderful point, actually. So that's what we said about the aliens laughing at us. Actually, we have a comment coming in from Joshua who says that going to Mars 11. So that's our target group for for astronauts. Going to Mars is all he wants to do in life. It is his dream.
Amazing. I mean, just work hard in school, lots of maths and science. Astronauts are always very good at math and science. And I think like you're the perfect age to do it.
So we've got Henry B, who's actually a very active user on in our questions. He said that he was looking at NASA missions today on Spacelog. So as we were talking about resources, you can also look at the current NASA missions in real time to learn how they're progressing, which is a thing that not everybody knows about, and it's a fantastic resource of being up to speed with what's happening in space.
Yeah, that is wonderful. Thank you, Henry.
So there are a lot of there are a lot of comments on the same note, I guess. One of them very well summarized by Anonymous, who says that he thinks the things African Americans weren't able to do are unfair. And there are other comments saying that it is extremely unfair that women were not allowed to take jobs, the men did, and that this is, some people are using strong words like this is disgusting or this is unthinkable. And yes, it is unthinkable right now for us because we live in a different world right now and have an entirely different mindset, thankfully, because society is changing. But as you've said, years ago, it was really not the case. So these are our grandparents, and we are the grandchildren who think the grandparents lived in Stone Age. So that's roughly the comments we're getting.
No, I mean, great comments. I mean, I think strong language is important, right? When we're talking about these very, very big topics. If people weren't passionate about this, nothing would get improved.
Yes, absolutely. So actually, because all of the questions are somewhat similar, I've got one that I fished out that I find would be entertaining for you guys to respond to, and I think that's where we should finish. So the question comes from Anonymous, who asks, would you rather go to Titan or live for a year on the moon?
Yeah, I think my response would go to Titan because it's a new thing. And it would be like really awesome to go and try and discover something new. Yeah.
Louis, I'm really interested in your opinion.
Definitely, I would choose to go to Titan. Just yesterday, they announced that there were some remnants of sea ocean in Ceres, which is a asteroid of sorts between in the asteroid belt. So there's many other places in the solar system that are worth exploring. So I'm all for new places. The moon is interesting and all, but a new planet, moon, would be super exciting.
So my answer is Titan for the same reason as Annabelle, but there's also a very, very cool reason. Titan has two unique features. One of this, so the surface gravity on Titan is fairly weak, and it also has a very, very thick, dense atmosphere, which the combination of those two things means that a human in a wingsuit could fly like under human pressure. Like if you gave yourself a spacesuit with kind of wings, you could flap your arms and fly on Titan.
That is so cool.
So yes, so we've got a lot of different inputs. One driven by curiosity, Annabelle. The other driven purely by scientific excitement. That's Lewis. And then we've got the space birds from Matt.
One driven by childish glee.
Thank you. I think these are wonderful answers. Thank you. Thank you guys for providing those. I think this is a very good moment to end our stream for today. Is that correct?
Yes, I'll say thank you very much. I was before you. I think you were about to wrap it. Before that, I will say we are doing 3 of these book club streams. So the next one we are doing next week is George's Secret Key to the Universe by Lucy and Stephen Hawking, which is going to talk about all different kind of weird and wonderful things that are out there in the universe. So yeah, if you've been reading along, you don't have to finish. As you've seen from this stream, lots of people don't make it all the way through, but it's still fun to jump on and give us your thoughts.
Yes, absolutely. So on that note, thank you everyone for joining in. Thank you, the most wonderful audience, and hopefully see you next week.
Wonderful. See you next week.
Bye.
Thank you.